Okay, good morning. I am live. So, as I said yesterday, normally I have a guest on this. I want to say show, but I'm not sure it's actually a show. But for the episode yesterday and the episode today, this is all about me, which makes a change. And the reason, as I said yesterday, I'll be quite open. The mechanics behind actually setting up guests and having that all planned out didn't. I'd neglected it slightly over the last couple of weeks, and that meant that I didn't actually get to have guests planned for this week. On reflection, because I'm accountable only to myself, I said that I would actually do two lives. And yesterday's one, if you want to go and check it out, it's on my profile. But today is more about the history of Vantage Point, the company that I've created, and what I'm doing here, and why that's come to be, and a bit more around that. So, feel free to ask me any questions if you're in live. I didn't see any DMs, but you can just add a comment on here, and I will look to answer those towards the end. But it's really to sort of have a bit of a look, but give you a bit of background about what I do, why I do it, how it came to be, and have a bit of a reflection of those. The I've been doing this for just about 20 plus weeks now, so I've had nearly 40 guests on here, and I want to sort of reflect on that, but also give you some of the background, maybe talk about some of the tech, how it works, what my process is, because it might seem, so to some people it might seem quite simple and straightforward for what I do. To others it might seem complicated. So it depends what angle or what lens you're looking at. Um, but yeah, let's get into it. So I think it's a good place to start with some background about me. So if you follow me or you've watched any of the videos, from time to time I kind of bring in a bit of my history. So I'm from the UK. I now live in Luxembourg, which I'll get to in a minute. Um, and I worked in corporate. I worked for a large bank, HSBC, for a long time. Changed jobs quite regularly, internally, sort of every 2 years. Um, and yeah, I had a great time. Didn't earn a lot of money, but in terms of jumping from one company to another, but I grew quite a lot internally in knowledge and doing different jobs. And um, one of the best jobs that I ever had in that industry was process modeling. And it come the reason I bear with me. The reason that I tell you about this is the reason I started my company in the first place, and it is all linked. So, um, and I basically work for a guy, Peter. If you're watching this, yeah, thank you. You know how much I appreciate you. So I worked in projects. I worked in the operations side for a long time, and then my job was outsourced to India. I took it out there for. I went out there for 3 weeks to do a handover process. It was a real game changer for me in terms of um, sort of trusting myself. I'd never really sort of travelled with work, and it sort of opened up my eyes to learning new cultures, um, not being so afraid of the unknown. And that was quite a pivotal time. When I came back, I'd helped previously be in a project team, and I fell into the project world, became a business analyst, did that, and slowly moved up the ranks and became, I would say, quite good at what I was doing. The area or the niche I was working in, I knew my stuff. I knew the products sort of back to front. So, and then towards the end of that, I was looking at maybe leaving the company. And at that time, I had a opportunity to join a process modeling team, and this was run by a guy called Peter Dobson, and a small team. And it basically, for those who don't know about process modeling or know it from a different term, it's basically looking at the process that you do, especially in the work environment, and mapping that out physically on a piece of paper. There's a bit more to it than that, but that's the essence of it, and just saying how you do that. Now, Peter at the time showed me a way of doing this. I'd kind of self-taught myself to do process modeling. You do in kind of the project world, I'd never really mastered it, and I'd seen different ways of doing it. Um, but ultimately, he showed me some different perspectives and how to do it in a way that blew my mind, and I absolutely loved it. And it's where I came alive. It allowed me to be curious, go and ask questions, sort of dig in, be a bit, try and investigate what's going on, go and speak to many people. I started to feel a bit more of an expert because when you're doing one domain, you just focus on that. So I had my area of expertise, but when I was doing the process modeling, you got to sort of go up at a higher level, speak to many people. You were considered the sort of go-to person that knew stuff, and you were the connector of all of these parts. And I really loved that job because I could go away, be quiet, be on my own, go and work things out. Then I could go and speak to people. Um, I didn't necessarily like presenting. I found, when I had to present and loads of people were giving me all their information at one point, I didn't really like that. I focused too heavily on what I looked like or what I was saying, and that made me feel a bit awkward, and I really didn't get things. So I can't. I'm not brilliant at multitasking. Um, so that was an amazing job. At the time, my partner, there was a discussion about moving to London. I'm from a place called Essex in the UK, outside of London, or there was the option to go to Luxembourg. And for some strange reason, I didn't want to move into London. I thought it was less scary for some reason to move to Luxembourg. So I moved to Luxembourg about 10 years ago. I don't know what it was about the place. I visited as part of the project world that I've been working in. Seemed a very nice, very clean, very well thought out place. And then I moved. Unfortunately, I couldn't move at the time for a internal move because they were letting people go in HSBC. Um, but it took me about 8, 9 months because I didn't have any connections out here to find a job, English speaking, that accepted me. And I worked for another bank, and it was great. The people were nice. It was a huge learning curve for me in terms of the lifestyle, the way that things are done. It was quite different than London. It wasn't as cutthroat and go 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 all the time. So there was a bit of adjusting on my side. Unfortunately, I didn't really feel that I fitted the job that I wanted, or I thought that I was going for. It didn't really materialize as I thought it would. And for a long time, I thought that was me. I felt that, there was something that I'd misunderstood and didn't really get, or I was setting the wrong expectations. So I was there for about 2.5 years, and during that time, I I've always two major things happened. The first one, um, when I'd moved, I'd left all my family and friends and routine and everything back in England, and I tried to bring some of that into Luxembourg. But overlaying that with feeling very insecure about everything, not knowing the language, not knowing the layout of the land, not knowing how to get around, and not having outlets and all the things that I'd built up over the last 25 years or 20 years in the UK. Yeah, it's it showed up in many ways. And my partner at the time, she said that I was coming across as quite angry, not violent, but the way I was expressing was quite something. And I'd noticed this before in my life. Just when things weren't quite right or weren't quite landing with me, yeah, I became more vocal. I was not violent, but sort of angry in a way. And she said, "Why don't you go and speak to someone?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay. I'm quite open to talking about things." So I ended up seeing a cognitive behavioral therapist, um, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. And I talk about this a lot on this channel. Um, it's one of those things where at first you think, oh, it's a weakness, something's wrong, I'm broken, and you want to go and speak to, or you need to go and speak to someone to get fixed. Um, But I found an amazing therapist, and she was lovely. We really connected. She took the time to understand me, didn't apply just all the logic, to me, but she held up a mirror, and I did that for a long time. But it sent me on this journey of self-discovery, and she explained to me in one of the first sessions that actually that's very brave, because a lot of people spend their lives not looking at who they are, or just avoiding some of those, that sort of inward reflection. And it took me on this journey. It was amazing. I got to speak about things, uncover things, just reframe things in our mind, because I realized that a lot of things, or a lot of the stories that I had in my head, weren't actually true. They were just seen through a child's eyes, and I hadn't really processed it with an adult's perspective. Now, there's nothing untoward in my background, and I think this is something that I would like to get out there. People think, I know obviously people have been through a lot of abuse and very hard times, and so when you think that you had a nice childhood upbringing, etc., that you don't need to go and see someone, but there is a lot that's going on in our mind and the way that we process things, and um, it's so freeing to actually look at that and talk about it quite openly, because a lot exists in our head. But when you actually explain it and you say the words out loud and someone plays it back to you, you can realize how silly some of those things actually sound. And when you say those things and you look at it and you go, oh, that isn't actually how I see myself, or believe myself. So I don't want to dwell on the therapy side of things too much, but one of the big things for me is about talking about those things, reflecting and looking inwards. One of the major advocates I am is for guys to actually go and talk about things. Now, that's not to say that women don't have problems, or they shouldn't go and talk about it. Absolutely, this is for everyone. And one of the key aspects is finding someone that you trust and that actually works with you. And if that takes 5 different therapists you have to go and speak to, do that. It's much more important to find the right person that you connect with and that understands you and can see you through on that journey. But for men, I think this is a deeply important thing. I think we feel that it's a weakness, or we don't talk about things, or the way that men approach things is, oh yeah, let's have a drink and we'll forget about it. But actually, people do want to talk about it. I think especially men, they cover it up, and covering up stuff, just it shows up in other ways, and it can show up in your body and illness and things like that. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'm happy to talk about it in a bit more detail. Send me a DM. I can talk about it, etc. Maybe I'll do a separate video on that at some point if you're interested. So that was point number one. That was a transformational part, looking inwards to understand who I was, realizing I'm not broken, that I am good enough, and how I show up is absolutely great. And oftentimes we don't realize what other people think about us. We assume, okay, and we often reflect how maybe negatively we think about ourselves, and that's how other people are projecting. But in reality, that's not how it is. And most people think, they hold us in higher regard than we hold ourselves. And having that moment to reflect on that, I realized, oh, okay, actually, there was more to me than I thought. Now, second thing, I read this book, The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And I'd gone into some self-help books. I kind of was drawn to that sort of world. I quite like success stories. But this book here was a real transformational moment for me. I'm not saying, I'm not recommending this for everybody, but this for me. So I think I wanted to escape the corporate world. I wanted to do things on my own terms. And the cover itself, if you see it, it's a guy sitting in a hammock, and you think, oh, okay, that's great. That's what I want for my life. But the book is so much deeper than that. It's about, for me, the biggest lesson was taking away that there are rules, but those rules were created by other people, and what you do and how you do it for other people, excuse me, isn't actually designed to help you. Now, this blew my mind because I've always been one of those good boys, followed the rules, wanted to, I was a people pleaser. And I felt that's just the way it was. My upbringing, my dad went to work every day, he left the house at 6:30, was back at 6, very structured, very routine. And he worked all his life and he retired when he just before his 65th birthday. Um, and so I thought that's the way that things were done. And, you're an employee, you get paid, you follow all the rules. And in that book, it showed me that actually that's not the case. You can do things for yourself, and it's kind of re- sort of revealing the curtain and what's behind the curtain. And I realized that actually it gave me permission to try and experiment things on my own, and that was hugely liberating for me. Quite scary because it's like the Matrix. You've just been told that actually, you're in a game and you're playing that, but actually the reality is something different. And I started slowly to think, oh, okay. And one of the things he does is he sets up his own company and he automates that. And he set me down this journey of creating my own company. Excuse me, need a morning coffee to keep going. So, what happened is at this time I was quite unhappy with my job. People were very nice, but I just felt like I always say, a round peg in a square hole. I was just trying to bend and fit. And um, I, I started to do this work on therapy. I read this book, and then I was like, okay, what do I like doing? And this idea of process modeling still sat with me. It was something I'd really connected with, but I wasn't able to do it in Luxembourg. People trying to explain to people how to do it was quite, um, people weren't really buying into it. So I set up a company in the UK, and so actually, what happened is I quit my job in this bank and had no place to go to. There was a series of things that had happened, nothing untoward, just didn't feel right, and it came to a point where I took charge of my own life and I quit. Um, and it was the most empowering thing I've ever felt. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And it felt all this pressure because I'd spent a long time going, oh, should I find, oh, well, trying to find other jobs and then worrying constantly that, okay, what happens if, I know this job, I know the people, they're very nice. What happens if they want me to work more hours or they want something different from me? And I constantly worried about that world. And that went on for quite a long time. So I was at the company for about 2.5 years. I'd say at least a year before that, I started to struggle with a lot of things. And then feeling that I took control of the situation, I quit. I didn't have a job to go to. People thought I was crazy, but I felt the most freest I've ever felt in my life and taking charge of that. And it was like jumping off a cliff. And I was getting married at the time. Yeah, we were due to have a baby. So really, the worst time in the world you can imagine that you would want to, have no financial stability in your life. But I've always been careful with money. I had a bit of a backup plan. I'd made, some calculations, and I quit. And I felt so free and liberated to go and do. And in that last month, I showed up in even more of a way than I did before because I felt free. I felt liberated. I wasn't judged, and I had a great time. Anyway, I quit, and then I wanted to create my own company. So I did. I had some time off, and I started my own company in the UK. It's very easy to do. Seems complicated at first, but it takes you about 20 minutes or and £20 to do. And I had these grand visions of starting this process modeling company where I would coach people this method that Peter had taught me, and that people would flood to me. And I've put it out there, I've built it, and people will come to me. And that didn't happen. I got bogged down with a lot of things. There was a lot of gurus out there, telling you how to do it, how to master websites and SEO traffic. And I started to get quite diluted in what I was doing. I felt that I needed to do all of these things. Um, it felt good, but felt quite scary at the same time. I also did one YouTube video. recorded it in the apartment where we were living. And I look back now, and it's not cringy. I'm quite proud that I actually did it, but I put it out there, and I felt that absolutely I'm going to put one video out there and people are going to come. And no one did. No one did at all. Now that was quite disheartening, because I had always lived in the future and what if and how it's going to be and etc. And I thought I could sort of manifest that if I thought about it hard enough and I worked towards it. Nothing happened. At the same time, people I'd worked with, that I'd connected with, there was an opportunity to do a consultancy role. Excuse me. And I I took it. I went for the interview. Absolutely didn't want the job. I wanted to focus on starting my own business. And I went to this interview, and because I didn't want it, I wasn't rude. I was just very clear about actually what they need to do, and all of those insecurities that I would normally bring. That part of me that would go, oh yeah, I hope they validate who I am. They can see who I am. And I really, working from this place of, okay, I need this job, and I really didn't want it. So I came up with this different energy. I came out with, okay, I don't want this, but I'm going to come to this interview. And at the beginning of the interview, it was okay. And then they said something, and all of my background in projects just came flooding in, and I absolutely aced it. When you have a conversation, and it's just like you see stars in other people's eyes. They're like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I was like, okay. And basically, it ended up being a consultancy role. And I went through a company, a friend of my partner's, and I did that job for about 6 months, maybe a bit longer. And it was a project, and it was something that I ended up doing quite on my own, because there were other projects going on that needed focus, but I could take charge of that, and I absolutely loved it. It was quite scary. I felt out of my depth. I at points I felt very insecure, because it was very technical based and I wasn't technical. But once I got past that, I realized it didn't need to be that scary, and that people overcomplicated. I was taking over a project that had been overcomplicated, and I needed to go back to basics, and I needed to trust myself to do that, and I did. It took me a little while to realize that, okay, what was done before wasn't me out of my depth. It was what was done before was not right for what needed to be done. I took charge of that, and I absolutely loved it. But I pretty much worked on my own most of the time, and I felt that feeling of autonomy, and I loved that, and it was amazing. Same time, we had our first child, and then I took some parental leave, came back and joined that company afterwards, and worked in another project. Didn't quite land. It was okay. People were nice, etc. But it was a different project, and I was working in a team, so it was, people were super nice, but it just didn't feel right for me. And so then I moved roles a couple of times, had a second child, took parental leave. It's very good if anyone's ever thinking about it, especially as a dad. Is an amazing thing. In Luxembourg, they're really great at doing these things and supporting you financially. Best thing I could have ever done. It created the foundation of the relationship I have with my children today. Even though I'm not with their mother, I was able to build on that relationship, and that was absolutely amazing in so many ways. And we can talk about that separately if you're interested. Now, towards the end of that, I'd done a couple of roles, and after the second parental leave, I didn't want to go back to being in projects. I wanted to do something different. And at the time, my partner, she explained, okay, well, why don't you? I was thinking about quitting the consultancy company, but she said, why don't you do something else and offer maybe some value within the company? And I ended up saying, okay, I want to help the consultants and connect with them, see what's going on with them. This later, so it was accepted. I worked 3 days a week. I took a huge pay cut, massive, but I was really enjoying what I was doing. I had freedom and flexibility, full autonomy over my job. my life and how things were to be done. And it was really great. And the idea for me was connecting with people and those consultants and going and seeing what works for them. Are they happy? Is there something not quite right? Whatever it is. And I started that role with an agenda because I was connected to the director of the company, and I I listened to him, and maybe some things going on with the consultants, and sometimes I would bring that message or trying to understand what the problem was. But then I quickly realized that when I did that, when I came with an agenda to talk to people, um, that really didn't work because people can smell it, and they feel that you're not really interested in them. So I let that idea go. So whenever I met a consultant, I had no preconceived idea of what I was going to speak about. There was no agenda. I just went and let the conversation flow. And from that point on, it was a different world. The way that people engage with me, the way that we opened up, and the way that we talked about things. And oftentimes, I found that we have this thing that we want to say or we want to project, but there's often something behind the scenes going on. And you have to get through that level. You have to talk about that stuff to build trust, etc., or just talk about it and get it out of the way. But oftentimes, there's things sitting behind that actually people want to talk about, or maybe they're struggling with. And most of the time, people will get to there. And if they trust you, then I felt very privileged that maybe they would share some of those things with me. Um, excuse me. I was never there to solve people's problems. I didn't see that. A couple of things that worked very well in that job was going for a walk, taking people out of their environment. The pressure of thinking there's other people can hear you, or going to a meeting room, because it's a different thing. I used to go for walks with people, and yeah, I wasn't facing off against someone. I wasn't looking them in the eye, and they felt, not okay to talk to me. We would go for walks, change environment, go to the local park, and people shared a lot of things, and they felt instantly better. Um, and they were very grateful, and I could see the power of that. And I realized that it was not, it was something that we don't often do in corporates, in companies. We don't spend the time um, thinking about people and what they need and just having conversations. We have a lot of things around well-being, but they're often deemed as tick the box exercises. So I'm conscious of time. I know that's maybe some background that you might not have thought that I'd talk about, but there's often links between all of these things. Now, fast forward a little bit, and because of financial constraints and other things, that job no longer was something that the company wanted to support or could support. So um, I actually ended up being made redundant, and that was 18 months ago now. As part of that, I had a small amount of gardener's leave. But then in Luxembourg, you can fall into the unemployment scheme, and you can receive this chômage, which is actually very good in terms of financial package, and it gives you a year of unemployment. Excuse me. um, and as part of that, they said there's a start your business program, and with that, they help you start your own business. Now, they don't do everything for you; they just put you into this program. You show up once a month, and you have to do these sort of networking, or people will present. Excuse me. You can present yourself, and it was a bit of a strange world. And the idea is that they're going to encourage you to start your own business. Now, I still have my company in the UK, never made any money, kind of let it go, all with the idea that one day it would be a success. Now, I needed to set up my own company in Luxembourg, and they don't tell you what to do, but I always felt there was this disconnect between leaders and people, and I thought I could be a consultant to help leaders connect with their people. And that was the idea. I would create Vantage Point Consulting to effectively connect with leaders, and talk to them and see, okay, there's a different way to connect with your people, speak the same language, what's missing, etc. I felt that was something that people wanted, but the reality is the way that I was selling it, um, and wasn't not great. I just don't think I was connecting with the right people. Whilst I believed in it, it didn't feel that I didn't really own that. And Yeah, it was something, yeah, just came across, I don't think, very genuine. Although I felt genuine about it, I didn't feel as passionate as anything else that I sort of go into. And um, at the time, I had been just before being made redundant. I had a career coach. She was amazing because she allowed me to see a different world. She sort of helped me zoom out and see the bigger picture on certain things and not get caught in the details. And especially when you start out on your own um, and you've been made redundant, and you know that you don't have a lot of people around you. It's great to have someone in your life that can, you know, see you, call you on, you know, maybe, you know, when you get caught in this bit of a funk or how you're seeing things, just to maybe reframe it. So I thought that was really good, and I saw her for around 2 years. And then at the same time, I thought, oh, okay, my money's going to run out in unemployment. I need to be able to do marketing. And this is one of the things that, or they don't teach you. You know, it's easy to say, yeah, you can start a business. And from an admin perspective, it's simple to start a business. You just have to do some paperwork, although I don't like doing that. That's one of my bugbears. But I realized I needed to do marketing and I didn't know how to do it. And I came across this guy who was offering a way to sell your product. And one of the things that he was doing LinkedIn Lives, and he would encourage you to go live once a week, maybe with a guest or maybe on your own, to explain your product and service. And I'd never done a LinkedIn Live. I didn't know what that was, how it worked. I just assumed it was just like a Zoom call. And so what was happening is that I was seeing, you know, this coach and, you know, this marketing guy, and I was doing the things that each of them wanted me to do, and often these were kind of in conflict. And underneath all of that, I felt that my money was running out in terms of, you know, unemployment. What was I going to do? How was I going to make money? I've got to support two kids. I live in this apartment, and life is quite expensive in Luxembourg fundamentally. And I didn't know on my savings. I'd spent a lot on, you know, when I took this big pay cut to do this chief happiness officer role. So where I had this financial stability before, all of that was drying up very, very quickly. And um, I started to get frustrated, angry, because I was trying very hard. And a lot of the gurus, I'm very much into following YouTube and seeing how these people are and and what they do. And most of these people go, yeah, just work hard, get up early, go do this, do this. And I was doing all of that. I was doing these things, and it just felt like I was pushing against the wrong wall. I was just, and it wasn't moving, and it didn't matter what I was doing. I was trying too hard, and it didn't feel that genuine. So, and I kept going round and round in circles, getting more frustrated, not with these people that were helping me, but just more with myself. And that frustration kind of built up and built up. And I went for a walk with my girlfriend. I've got a nice apartment here, and in the background there's a huge fields that we look over, and there's a path. And I remember going for a walk one evening, and I just got frustrated, and I said, you know what? All I'm going to do is 2 LinkedIn lives a week, and that's it. I'm going to do that for a year. And through this frustration, I seemed to be able to connect. There's something very pure about what I was saying came through. I don't know where that came from. Um, it just felt like I tapped into something that felt right. And I felt this lightness, this ability to go, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to let everything else go. So I stopped the marketing. I kept on with the career coach because there was other things in there that I thought was of benefit for me. And again, for either of those, I hadn't, you know, their services were amazing, but what was inside me, this frustration, this thing that was the problem, had nothing to do with them. It was about me setting boundaries, understanding myself, and taking charge of what I wanted to do. And through having that, I don't even think it was a one-sided. I think it was a one-sided conversation I was talking to my girlfriend about, and I just said it, and it felt so pure, so connected to the thing that I wanted to do, and it was so easy for me to understand. And what it created was this ability just to say, everything else goes away. I'm just going to focus on this. So I set to work just doing that, and with no agenda in mind, just connecting with people. And it felt good. The only person I was accountable to was myself. Um, and I'd committed to doing it. I tried to say it publicly, but no one was necessarily connecting with me or that bothered of what I was going to do. But I felt this obligation to myself to do what I've said, 2 LinkedIn lives a week for a whole year. And why did that come about? Because I think oftentimes we give up too much. And I think we give up if it's not right, that's fine. But oftentimes we're ready to break through a wall, but we don't see any results. And we are so close to it, yet we give up. And I wanted to do this as an experiment. I started following a guy called Joe Hudson in the US. He's very much into who we are, our feelings and our thoughts, etc. And he started talking about experimenting and being in this world of wonder. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this experiment. I'm going to see. A year for me is long enough. Um, if things can't progress within a year, um, then okay, that's fine. I will find another job. If I go and work in McDonald's, fine, I'll go and do that. That's something. I will have given it a huge amount of time. If I can't get it to work, that's okay. Maybe there's a different path for me. But I don't look back when I'm older and say I didn't try, um, because I've always followed the rules, always done the safe thing. And this didn't feel risky. It actually felt very safe to do because um, I wanted to do it. There was some sort of connection within there. Now, um, the biggest problem behind that was money. And I talk about this quite a lot. I've even talked to experts around money. And I said this yesterday. There's an amazing lady out there called Victoria Brennan, and please go and follow her. And if you're struggling with money or there's some blockages in your life, go and speak to her, because the relationship we have about money is often misconceived. It's more about an energy or a block or the way that we see ourselves, and that shows up in the way that money is. And I I basically was worried about the money side of it, and I started to panic. And when you panic about money, I make, and I don't know if it's the same for everybody else, I make decisions that are not the best, because I feel this lack of money, and that I need this certainty. And um, I took that. I tried to understand how I could take that off the table, because I felt I was showing up with the wrong energy. And fortunately for me at the time, I had a property with my ex-partner, and that was being sold, and some money came in, and I said to myself, right, I'm going to do this for the next year. I'm going to do this, and the financial aspect of it, I'm going to take away, and I'm going to just self-fund this for a year. Now that relieved so much pressure, and I know that I'm very fortunate for that, and I know that not everyone can do it. But finding a way to give yourself that breathing room to focus on what you're doing, hone your craft, have good conversations, and not bring that agenda of I've got to sell something, was so rewarding and so freeing that it allowed me to move in a different way. And I'll explain that in terms of how I get my guests. So I use LinkedIn, and there are paid versions, but I have the free version. And a lot of this isn't something I worked out, is something, the knowledge that I got from the marketing team, the marketing course that I was doing. So I didn't need a fancy, premium subscription. But what I did need is guests. And I've tried previously to um, link with people and connect with people, but oftentimes, you get rejected or it's very slow and it's hard to do. And the guy at the time suggested this software called Canbox, and never heard of it. But basically, it's a software that connects to LinkedIn, and behind that, you can actually create this automation, a series of automated messages, almost like an email sequencing. Um, and I'd never seen it before, never really thought about it. But what happened is one of the things he said in his business was that the the way that he got most of his guests, it was about reaching out on LinkedIn, and he automated the initial process of connecting with these people. So it took me a little while to understand how to do that. I asked for his help, and um, what I then committed to do was understand, okay, if I connect with 20 new people every single day, 5 days a week, that's 100 people. And if I did that manually on my own, the problem is that you've got to then write a specific message for that person. And that is very time and energy draining because you have to go in to look at profiles and go into things. And that when I've tried to do that before, it's very slow, very heavy process. It didn't really bring any any value. And so what I actually did is I connected this software, Canbox. If you're interested, I can send you the link to it. I can do a video on how it works for me. And what it does is every time you connect with someone and they allow you to be connected, you'll just send this message, whatever you put in there. And I made it very simple, again, based on the guidance of the marketing guy. And I made it very simple, non selly. It was just an opening. And that really was a game changer in how I connected with people. Because out of 100 people that I would connect with, I don't know how many on a weekly basis actually accept that. But if they do, then there's this nice message. No sales. It's just trying to get to know people better. And it took this heavy lifting, this okay, searching, scrambling around, um, and also this constant feeling that you're being rejected. You're asking people almost a permission to be accepted. And because I took that away, I wasn't feeling that, okay, looking at those results, or I've asked 10 people, have 10 people replied. I just do the job. I do the 20 people every day. And some days that doesn't work. And that's, again, a reason why if you let that mechanic slip, that's the engine that runs a lot of what I do. And um, so I connected the software, and then what I was finding is more people were actually coming back to me, and they started to connect, and they would come back. And as soon as they came back, I took over. I brought that human side of myself and that curiosity side that I've always had. And I started asking them questions, connecting. Now, some of those conversations absolutely led nowhere. Like people were just, yeah, they didn't want to talk, or a lot of people on LinkedIn are obviously spammed constantly. And I think there is this fear that actually they're being sold to, and I didn't want to be that guy. So because I had nothing to sell and that agenda of selling something went away, I could just be myself. I could just be curious, understand. And so if people then responded to my first message, then I would take over and I would have that conversation. You can do that all in the software of Canbox, and then you could track it. It was a lot easier just to see. And then what I found that when you then over you have this connection with people, people are very open, and they realize that you're not trying to sell to them, um, and that you could have conversations. And this opened up a new world to me because the people that were responding to me were very generous with their time and their responses. I had a couple of questions that I would have on a follow up message, and people started to share things, and they realized that I wasn't there to sell. My my goal wasn't even about having LinkedIn lives. It was just about genuinely connecting. And when I felt that there was a connection to have a live and to talk about things, then I asked. I didn't push it on people. There are some instances where I come across people that I go, I absolutely need to have this conversation. And through that back and forth, I started to build deeper connections. And then it never felt like a big ask to ask people if they wanted to go for a LinkedIn Live. And for someone who spent most of their life fearing rejection, I didn't feel that I was being rejected. I just felt that, okay, these people either don't want to do that, which is absolutely fine, um, or some people that it's not the right time for them, or some people do actually really want to do a LinkedIn Live and talk about who they are, what they're doing, and I can provide a platform for that. And um, it was so, I'd say, shocking to me for someone that had spent most of their lives kind of sitting in the shadows and, wanting everyone to please them, to then being in a situation where I wasn't trying to please people. I was really connecting with people through my laptop around the world with people that I would never come into contact with. Um, and I have to trust the LinkedIn algorithm because it suggests people, if I connect with people in a certain area or a certain field, then may send me some more of those people. It doesn't serve up maybe the right people that I would want to connect with. But I just followed that. And through that, I continued to have these engagements. And then I realized that actually this engine was being created. I had some system in place. I had this will to ask questions, and the rest was about having the live, and uh, and that was quite easy for me. And that uh, it's taken me a long time to be okay with saying that I'm good at something, because I've often felt that when you say that you're good at something, it feels like bragging or showing off. But I've had enough. I believe in myself enough, and I've done enough of these and got the feedback to know that I'm good at it. I'm sure there's things that I can get better and improve on, and that's actually part of mastering your craft. But I remember the first live I ever did, and it was with a girl, Stefania. And so, Stefania, if you're listening, you really sort of helped me get off the ground. But she was actually in the marketing course that I was attending, and I think it was quite something for her to be in live. And I said, why don't we just do a live? And I felt confident enough in my abilities. I was okay with being on camera. Um, and we had a great conversation and we did it live. And a combination of all of these things really sort of stuck with me. So I've told you a lot about everything that's gone on in my life. And some of that might have not seemed relevant at the time, but you can find that there's threads and things that I do and how they've connected. And I think one of the big things for me is often this self-awareness, because sometimes we've been doing a job in our past or experience and you really dislike it, but it's actually very revealing. And some things have not worked out as a success in the way that you'd imagined it to be. But I found that most of those things actually lead to something great. So, my process modeling days, the idea of being on video, the idea of working solo, not in groups, the idea of having autonomy and freedom over my life, um, the ability to connect with people, being a chief happiness officer, not putting agenda on the table and actually having real conversations, being curious and being able to ask questions. Um, all of these things have really come together in a way that really supports me, supports my guests, allows me to have these real conversations. And I said this yesterday. I've had a lot of people sort of say to me that the people's attention span is quite limited, so maybe I should cut these down or edit them down. But there's something inside of me telling me that actually there is this need for these long form content, unscripted. Um, and I don't script anything, so I'll let you into a bit of the background of what I do. So I I have an initial conversation with someone to make sure that I have a rapport with that person, or they have enough to talk about, that we could do a live, and that they're comfortable enough to be on camera, and that they would have fun and I would have fun, and we could have this conversation. After that, I write just this mind map, and people have then said to me, "Okay, can you share what the structure is of the script?" And I don't have one. But what I do is, I found what's very useful for me is to do a mind map of maybe a structure or some ideas. So even for today, I do this. I did this morning. You won't be able to see it all, but it's just a direction of things that I might want to cover. Now, I am 100% comfortable if I hit none of those or all of those. What I think is important is following the person's energy, or the things that are coming out. And it's not a success or a fail if I don't hit any of those. It's about having that person in front of me, having that connection, understanding who they are, what's driving them, what's holding them back. And I think that real conversation, that openness, doesn't come from a scripted thing. If I sent a load of questions to people, they're just going to come back. Yeah, they might have thought about things, but my ability to be able to talk to people, hold a space where people will feel okay to share and to connect, that is hugely valuable. And I'm not seeing formats like that. I see everything edited down, to be a certain way. And for me personally, I feel that there is a big market for this openness and honestness. That it's not all perfectly done. We all have a load of things going on in our lives. Because I think when we get a bit real, when we get a bit honest about it, it allows others to be a bit more honest with themselves. And that's okay, because if we're kinder to ourselves, things move a lot easier. We we're more tolerant of ourselves. We're not trying to hold ourselves to excuse me, an unreachable standard that we see on social media. And that's why I've kept this as it is. So oftentimes people ask me about this. This is a this is a windmill that my kids found in a DIY center, and we were going to put it in the garden and stuck it into the sofa. And I keep it there because, yeah, it's fun. It's just a bit quirky. That I'm doing this from my apartment. There's no studio. One, I can't afford a studio, but I think people also realizing it allows that um, this need to be perfect. Okay, or how's my background? How am I presenting? That goes away, because if I can show up in a way that says, yeah, look, okay, I try to keep it clean. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't need to be this perfect, polished part of things, and that's the real life. That's actually how business is run. But we put on this pretense. We say, oh, it's all perfect, because that's how we think we connect and people trust our product. But I think in the world of AI technology, etc., everything can be faked in so many ways. And I really believe that actually people buy from people. I remember having this conversation with Alan St. Joseph, and he came up human to human, not business to business. And that stuck with me, because absolutely, people want a professional thing or product or service. That doesn't mean it can't be real. And the more people I speak to, the more people starting their own businesses, they're not pretending. They're you know they're the most successful ones are human. They bring in that human side, and because you connect on that human level, people trust you and understand and are prepared to listen to you. um, I think people, or maybe it's just me, but ultimately people are tired of being sold a framework, tired of saying, look, I've been this success. This is the way that I did it. This is the way that you must do it. I've signed up for all of that stuff before. And all it ever did was build frustration. And there's nothing in what I do I think I should sell to people. I'm absolutely okay to share in what I do or how I do it, but it works for me. And it works for me because it's aligned to what I want to do, how I want to live my life, how I've designed it. There is no money. There needs to be money at the end of this, or a way to earn money or generate it. And that will come. I'm 100% confident about that. But for now, I'm mastering my craft. I'm doing something that's really good without an agenda, without selling, without trying to pitch stuff to people, but to build that connection, to build that following, without the need to know, okay, yeah, I've got a million followers. That's not that important to me anymore. I used to think that following was a metric that was really important. And I remember looking at LinkedIn at one point, and I was going to get to 3,000 followers, and that isn't a lot of followers, but it felt like it was going to be that breakthrough moment. And then it got to 3,000, nothing changed. No one was reaching out to me for offers. And now I don't really look at my followers as a metric. I look at it and just it's interesting to see. But the depth of conversations and the connections with people is much greater and much more important to me than the followers that I have. And I'm also a slave to the algorithm, to LinkedIn. I could do the best thing in the world that absolutely everyone wants to know, and the algorithm won't send it to the people that need to know it. But I trust in that at the right point, people do get the message. People will feel supported. They will connect with things. And that's the right thing at the right time for the right person. Now, on top of all of that, I do these and I use this software called StreamYard. And StreamYard, I paid for the service for a year. And I'm actually able to connect to 3 platforms. First one is LinkedIn. That's my primary place that I spend my time. That's how I connect and build my list of guests and where I build my relationships. Second, it goes to YouTube. So YouTube, they're just the lives. There's a channel. If you're interested, I can post that at the bottom. You can go, and it's an easier place to go and find my content. I do put these on my featured section. And then lastly is Instagram. And I put Instagram up there because it was another platform. Someone suggested it was a good place to connect with people. I'm not very good at Instagram. I don't really understand it. But I'm using leverage, excuse me, of one conversation or 2 conversations a week and putting those out to multiple places. That one conversation is leveraged. That might reach other people, and it might reach the people that need to hear it at the right time. So that's the process. That's how I've got to where I am. That's how I do things. In terms of other technology, I have a lighting system just so it's better. I've changed this recently. If you want to know what I use, how I use it, please let me know. I don't know if you're interested in the tech side. I use this mic. It's a Rode mic. I've had this for a while when I bought years ago. I use an Apple MacBook for my camera. I have notebook, pen. I use Canbox. I use StreamYard, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. What else do I use? I use Buffer because I do daily content just to support that. That's something else thought I would try. And that's it. Doesn't need to be complicated. But it's taken me a long time to get to that point because in all of the marketing courses, everything that I've tried to do before, there's this world of things that you need to do. And I got caught up in that. And what you really need to do is feel some traction, because when you're starting out and you hold these people in high regard that they've seemed to have smashed it, when you're not making progress and you're trying really hard, you're working late at night, you're getting up early in the morning, you're taking time away from your family and friends because your mind is, okay, yeah, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, all with the idea of success and being successful, whatever you're trying to do. That creates this energy in you that you're pushing, and I feel that you're pushing it away. So one of the big things for me is that because I said that I was only going to do the LinkedIn Lives 2 a week, 2 was enough for a stretch for me. 1 was too simple and I didn't think I was going to get value out of it. 3 was pushing it. I didn't feel there was value. I didn't think I could give my guests the attention and just the attention and concentration that I think would have made it a good conversation. And then I said no to everything else. Allow me to set those barriers. So things that I was thinking about before, we get caught up in websites, email marketing, funneling, etc. And no, all of that's gone away. Um, and some things creep in from time to time, and I think, oh, there's maybe a distraction or something else I should do. Excuse me. But for the next year until the end of July, I'm going to keep doing this, and I love doing it. I love my guests. Um, I love that they show up for me. I love the fact that people are willing to come on camera for me. Some are absolutely okay on camera. Some are very hesitant, um, but they do. They trust me and they put their faith in me that I can get them through a conversation. Originally, I said I was only going to do these for half an hour. The reality is, they've all gone to an hour. Once I started taking it seriously, they've all gone for an hour, if not longer. And a lot of guests I've actually said I will come back for a round two. And I think a combination of all those things, my past, my background, who I am, understanding what I want, the life that I'm trying to design, the freedom and flexibility around that, systems, but also saying no to everything, saying, okay, no, I'm going to keep it simple. And by pushing everything else away, I actually was able to go down and focus on going faster and having those conversations, having those guests, um, being able to have an initial conversation and turning those into lives has been so rewarding for me. It's opened up my mind, have deep conversations, think about things differently, and be able to enjoy what I do. And I feel that's such a privilege. It can be lonely at times. Sometimes you don't know that you're doing the right thing, but slowly there are signals. I spoke to a young girl the other day, and she was saying that she watched the channel and she liked what I was doing and how I was doing it, and that was so empowering to me, because you don't always get the feedback that you're doing the right thing. And I'm sitting behind a laptop. Yes, there are people that like my posts and like things, but to have that feedback and that connection is wonderful. And in moments where there are doubt, and there's often doubt that goes in my mind, the path that I'm on, I believe, is the right path, but that doesn't mean that every day I wake up and I smash it. That just doesn't exist. And when someone comes along and just shares that in a very true and honest way, it's very motivational for me. And I'm not after it every single day, but again, you need to realize that what you're doing is a good thing, and sometimes you have to wait a while to get those signals. And that's it. I think that's a good place to end. I've managed to get myself over the hour, which is good. I hope that one inspires you, because I've never seen myself as anything but average, and I've actually turned that, and I realized that I am excellent in certain ways, but that doesn't mean that I'm great at everything. I found a path that I'm really enjoying. I'm leaning into that. I've cleared some of the things that were holding me back, like the money. And again, I know I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to do that. But at some stage that will run out, and I need to find a solution for all of that. But through doing this, there's just so much self-awareness, building connections, building deeper relationships with the people, with the guests, um, bringing information to other people, hopefully inspiring people to try other things. I'm not saying people should do exactly what I'm doing. If they want to, absolutely go for it. But if it's something else that you want to do, just try it. We're not on this planet for very long. If you can find it and experiment, have fun, enjoy it, play with it, do all of that, because it is very rewarding. Sometimes I do have to pinch myself to sort of say, there's a guest in front of me and they're showing up for me. Who am I to do that? And I don't let that stop me. I just lean into it and enjoy it. And those self doubts, etc., they can kind of go away when you keep proving it to yourself that things are working. People do want to have conversations, and when you believe that the long form content, unscripted, there is a place for it, and I'm not seeing it from other people. Why? And should you be following other trends? No, for the longest time, I followed trends, and for some reason, doing it my way feels really good. And I don't know why that's going to work. I have no idea other than what I like and what I'm enjoying. So if I like it and I enjoy it, I'm sure there's people out there that will. But it's also a good filter. Maybe people don't like who I am or how I do things. That's also really okay. And I'm very comfortable with that because I don't want everyone to be my audience. If it resonates with you, fantastic. If it doesn't, I don't want to waste your time. It's important that you spend your time on the things that you enjoy, and I might not be that person, and I'm really okay with that, which is strange to say because I've spent most of my life being a people pleaser. So you know, things change, and just keep on doing it. If you're having a bad day, go and talk to someone about it. Come on, have a live with me. Maybe we'll have a conversation about it, the real world, of starting your own business or being in corporate or doing something or thinking about change. I've had so many guests that I didn't think I could have a conversation with. I had my initial conversation that I felt very much out of my depth on was about perimenopause. And at the time, my girlfriend was here, and I connected with this lady, and Lolia, um, and she said, "Oh, how can I help you?" And this was through LinkedIn, and I was like, "Well, this is so out of my depth. This is I can't have a conversation. What do I know about perimenopause? I'm a male." And I was like, "Oh, I feel so silly." My girlfriend and said to me, "You should absolutely have that conversation." And I was like, "Okay." And so I did. And you know what? It was one of the most amazing conversations because I learned so much about perimenopause. Um, she made me feel so comfortable. I didn't feel that I was saying anything wrong in terms of being sexist or talking about our bodies in a way or anything like that. And it actually was very enlightening. It allowed me to realize that this is something that we don't talk about and how it would show up in business, whether you work in a corporate or you work for yourself, and the impacts for women, for teams, for people, everything. And I'm prepared not to be comfortable with those conversations. I had a conversation with a relationship or sex expert, and that was I felt very much out of my depth. I felt I couldn't show up. But do you know what? That conversation was amazing. It allowed me to understand the relationships and the things that we're not saying in those relationships show up in other parts of our world, at work, how we show up, etc. And that was very enlightening. So this job is testing me in many ways. I have so much gratitude for it, for the people that show up for me. And you know who you are. I can't thank you all. And for those future guests that are going to come on, absolutely. I really appreciate your time, what you're giving me. I love what I do. I'm going to continue to do it. If there's anything that you want to know, something I didn't cover or I skipped over, um, any feedback you want to share with me, absolutely please do it. I will do as much as I can. We will go back to scheduled guests going forward. I've got some exciting people lined up, so look out for those. Follow it on LinkedIn. Go on to YouTube. I'll share the channel afterwards, and you can go there if you want to find it. It's easier to get recordings rather than look for the algorithm on LinkedIn to serve up the right thing. It's on Instagram occasionally. It doesn't always work, but that's it. I hope you've enjoyed it. I enjoyed actually sharing some of this, the background of me. I don't often get to talk about it. I don't often think it's that exciting. But if it inspires you, motivates you to do something, feel a bit more connected to what I'm doing, makes you feel that you actually want to reach out to me and do a live, please do it. I'm very happy to have these conversations. It's a pleasure for me to do, and I'm grateful. So that's it from me. Thank you. Have a great weekend. If you're watching this today, or if it catches you at some other point, I hope you're enjoying your life and things are working well. So that's it. Have a great time, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you on some of my videos. Take care. Bye.